bottom line is this. Anyone subject to the work requirement is guaranteed a spot in the workforce development. Some of the conservatives, the fiscal hawks, wanted these savings to go back into the Treasury. Others wanted to be put it more into the ag side of the Farm Bill, and that is where kind of the intensity as far as the friction of how that is designed. So I wanted to make sure that those numbers got out publicly, and that people who were pro-SNAP or for more SNAP dollars understood that the people in this are still protected. But let me put my minister hat back on for just a second, if I could please, and talk from the heart for a moment. I believe God creates every man, woman, boy, and girl with unique abilities and skill sets and talents to be able to accomplish some wonderful things. And I think if we're not careful sometime, for able-bodied people, specifically with no adults, we can get to the place that a starter wage of $14, $15, $16 off an hour is a financial drop-off because of some of the dependencies and some of the programs that come out of the federal government. I think back when I started, 18 to 49, I would be on the high end of that. But I can remember when I started $3.35 an hour. I remember some of those things that began to work and have an opportunity to get out there in the workforce. What is intended, what the federal government, hopefully, even though we haven't always seen this case, the federal government's role is to be able to guide along to the place where that individual can get out there and discover that fulfillment, discover that purpose with the tools, the skills, and the abilities that are necessary to accomplish, to even one day give back to their community. And I think by putting some kind of motivation for able-bodied adults that have been on the SNAP program sometimes for many years, is trying to find a way, even paying for the workforce development, that they can begin to move forward. So that's, I wanted to get a little bit of an idea, but philosophically, but also understand what the Chairman Conaway, as well as the Ag Committee, is trying to do with the SNAP reform. So any questions regarding, I'll throw a few more either on SNAP, overall Farm Bill, or the other topic that we talked about was trade as well. Any other concerns, comments, or questions? We've heard some wonderful input so far this morning. Anybody needs to add anything to that comment-wise? I want to recognize sort of Linda down front here and let her share some thoughts before we continue, especially before we wrap up today.
As you have heard this morning, on behalf of Larry Wooten, North Carolina Farm Bureau President, he appreciates you coming out. He understands that having these conversations are very important, very engaging, and you doing your work for your district, and we just applaud you and your district staff as well as your DC staff. As you know and you've heard, in farming, uncertainty is one certainty we all have. Whether it be access to markets, whether it be stability and trade agreements. But one thing I do want to touch on that has not been addressed is a workforce. So you're talking about a workforce, a domestic workforce. People are not coming to our farms to do our jobs. We have a guest worker program that I have been with you on a farm, and you've heard the complications. That guest worker program is the only program that we have. However, you've also, in your comments, stated that your district is highly livestock driven. And the guest worker program that is currently accessed now does not work for the livestock industry. So we're seeing a labor shortage, and we're dealing with a guest worker program currently that is not able to the people that are utilizing the livestock industry. So there has been some conversations. Chairman Goodlatte has put out some ideas. Yes. There's multiple ideas up there, and this conversation has been going on for 20-something years. I guess my ask to you is to continue to advocate that our industry, farming, needs a guest worker program that works for all of agriculture. And as we move forward, understand the dynamics and the uncertainties, whether it be through our Farm Bill coming to the floor. If it comes to the floor, understand the conversations that have taken place up until this point, and that farm bills are 5-year farm bills, and they do evolve as the industry changes, but they are a certainty in an industry that deals with uncertainty on a day-to-day basis. So we appreciate your time, your opportunity to come. More importantly, we appreciate you recognizing this industry, because it is a very important industry, all aspects of this industry, and for you to take the time and come is a very important thing for us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I believe that the Food Lab program, the H2C program, I believe, which is what that is called, permits 410,000 guest workers in the first year and increase each year. Current H2A does not have a cap. Groups will likely potentially impose a cap, but does allow year-round employers to be eligible for the guest worker program, which is something that you addressed to. So that is something that we are looking, we would be in support of that bill. I'll go ahead and tell you that publicly. The Department of Labor received over 200,000 H2A visa requests, the most ever received in history. North Carolina ranked third in the country and had 20,715 H2A certificates for fiscal year 2017, or a little over 10% of the total certificates. The North Carolina Growers Association is the nation's largest user of the guest worker program. But to your point about livestock, as far as adjustments needed for that, it is duly noted today. We hear you will be able to have some response on that as far as what kind of adjustments that we would push for to be able to make sure that the livestock community here are also not forgotten when it comes to specific pieces of legislation. I think my first encounter with understanding what farmers go with H2A was at one of your meetings in Castle County, when the gentleman brought in his paperwork for one worker. It blew my mind. I actually took a picture of it sideways to see how much documentation he had. That's unfortunate that it's got to that point when it comes to regulations, and hopefully we'll continue to make improvements in that area as well, because I know that's quite a hassle. You might need a law degree, one that I don't have. Trey Gowdy, my friend, told me the other day when I said I'm not a lawyer, he said quit bragging. So fair enough there. Anything else?
Hello, I'm glad to recognize one very important person in the room.
Sure.
Ginger Cunningham, would you stand? Thank you for being here today. Ginger is many of you know her, the Director of Extension here in Chatham County. This is her home base here in this building, and we're honored to have you. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. And I learned Ginger, we were talking a little bit earlier, and I can already tell she's very smart, because for the first year and a half, she just blames anything that doesn't work right on sound. Who's recently retired. That's the secret how to deal with it. That's exactly right. So, and he doesn't even know half of it. No, I'm just teasing. Anything else? We want to wrap up here. Just give a couple closing comments. Yes, ma'am, right here. Don't
I'm a vegetable. Yeah, I'm a vegetable grower. I sell at farmers markets in the area, but I also volunteer at our local food pantry, Cora, here in Pittsburgh. And I would just like to comment that many of the people that come through Cora are also receiving SNAP benefits, and the SNAP benefits are not adequate to feed their family for a month. Many of them have small children. Many of them have many small children. And many are elderly, and they just don't get enough in SNAP benefits to cover their food costs. And I realize that SNAP was not designed to totally cover people's food needs, but nevertheless, people are going hungry, and they're in need of more assistance than they're getting right now, and having to turn to a food pantry.
Thank you for your comments, and I believe we have talked before on some of the volunteer work that you do at the food pantry. We may disagree on total numbers as far as how much can be taken out of this particular bill, but what I can agree on is I believe that you serve out of your heart in some of the communities as we've looked at some of your work. We may policy-wise differ, but I do appreciate the fact that it's important to you to make sure that the needs of all the community are met. There's no easy solution to trying to find more money to meet every need that exists. What we're trying to do sometimes is change a culture, change a mindset for those who are able-bodied to be able to find the education, the apprenticeships, the ability to be able to earn some of that supplemental income as they move forward. That's, I guess, can continue to be a point of contention and disagreement. However, I do appreciate you being here and your comments today regarding the people that you encounter on a daily basis. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
I think we have time for one more.
Let's do two. I don't want to do this lady right here. Can we go to her first?
I too am a small farmer and I run a producer in Tennessee, but I'm also a parent and I run a supplemental backpack program at Pittsburgh Elementary School. And I too agree with what Lori was saying, but I also want to point out that there are some big changes in the Farm Bill to the able-bodied adult without dependent rule. It now includes, if you have a child that's over 6 years old, that you are now considered an able-bodied adult. And if you look at the rules, they're going to change. It used to be you had 3 months to find a job if you lost work, but now that's been changed to 1 month. So if you are a parent and you lose your job and you can't find a job in a month, then you are going to be out of the program for a year. And that's a huge difference. That's way different than what we have now, and that really concerns me. I think that by changing that rule to children over 6 is really going to impact the people that this hurts most, and that's the kids, and they're our future. And we really have to think about that.
Great point. I want to reiterate, according to the text that I have, is that the able-bodied adult age doesn't change as far as 18 to 49. Once your children are old enough to go to school, it modifies it, but it doesn't take away the SNAP benefits as long as there is some opportunity for job search, apprenticeships, time limited, whether you're volunteering, if you show up at the food pantry, subsidized employment, financial literacy, any of that.
But it changes from what used to be 3 months to 1 month.
But it doesn't. As long as you're doing that, it does not cut off the benefits. I want to make sure that's clear, and we can follow up and maybe give you some more language on it as well. But thank you for your comments. Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here, Congressman. We appreciate it. I work for an organization called the Rural Advancement Foundation International. We're headquartered stone's throw down the road from here. One of the things that we do is we run a farm survival hotline. For about 12 years, I was the point person on once or twice a week, my phone would ring, and the other side would be a farmer saying, they're about to come for my equipment on Friday, I just got my notice of foreclosure, what do we do? And we have 2 people, and we send them out, and they sit at the kitchen table, and they go through the shoe boxes of receipts, and they figure out how to keep the family in their farm and in their home, and bring that next generation back to the farm. It's, the things we talk about in the big picture about, transitioning farms to the next generation, more sustainable and all this kind of stuff. The stuff that we talk about writ large, we do, how do we save this farm? And how do we transition this farm to something more sustainable and bring that next generation back? There was a joke that came out of the 80s farm crisis that was, if things keep going the way they're going, one guy's going to farm the whole country and his wife's still going to have to work in town to buy groceries. And this farm bill represents that philosophy.
Amen.
Yeah.
This farm bill represents a push towards efficiency over community, over small business, over diversity of business, a diversity of investment. Now, what's the thing that your investment broker tells you when you go in to do your retirement? They say, oh, diversify. Isn't that the thing? Every time you go in and talk to your retirement broker, they say, diversify. What we're doing is we're rapidly losing the diversity of businesses and the diversity of farmers and the diversity, the creativity of small and mid-scale farms around the country that have driven what is good about agriculture and has driven the economies of our rural communities. And if you want to see what that concentration has done, then drive down the main streets of the towns of your district and see how many closed businesses there are, see how many empty businesses there are, and see how the places like Kinston and other folks where those businesses will drive through Pittsburgh and see how much connection to local food and local production has brought back downtown Pittsburgh. People are coming here now, not for antique stores, but for restaurants that serve local food. And what I see is this bill and the way the commodities programs are structured, the way that the crop insurance is structured, the way that it guts conservation. Instead of us investing in conservation, which reduces the susceptibility to the hurricanes that we get, instead we are discouraging conservation. You can't do it in crop insurance. Crop insurance prevents you from using cover crops frequently. It's crazy. Because by using cover crops, you decrease your dependence on federal programs. What this bill does is makes it larger and larger, and over time, you are eliminating the entrepreneurial spirit of small and mid-scale farms. When someone gets a poultry contract, where do you think farmer creativity is in a poultry contract? None. Zero. It eliminates the great entrepreneurship, the great creativity, the brilliant. Our programs are run from a really radical notion that farmers are smart. And so this bill puts that philosophy on steroids. What we saw, according to USDA statistics, between 2007 and 2012, which, by the way, were the points of the highest commodity prices in history, a farm that did some level of direct market sales or value-added sales had a higher survival rate than one that didn't, at all scales. Not just small scale, not just in the farmer's market, but at all scales, farms that move into diverse markets. Even if they keep doing what, sure, we need people to grow soybeans, and we need people to grow cotton, and we need people to grow, but you can do more things than that. And what this does is it guts the ability for people, the things that help people do it in the marketplace, and puts that on steroids, and puts that concentration on steroids. If we follow this philosophy, my calls are up 25% year to year. And they were up 25% last year, year to year. We're training our folks on suicide prevention, and we lost one a couple of weeks ago to stress. A farmer in eastern North Carolina we've been working to for a while, who I think the bank killed him. 46-year-old guy who had a heart attack. And we are moving in the wrong direction. I'm not saying that crop insurance isn't important. It's incredibly important. But it has to be shifted to encourage diversification and conservation and all the good things about agriculture that reduce risk on the farm instead of reliance on the taxpayer. I'm not saying that commodities programs aren't critically important, and they are critically important. But we have to also address antitrust and the concentration of corporations who control the prices and can make prices go up and down wherever they want to. So the chances of a farmer getting a fair price are zero. We have to deal with the concentration. That means his price is through the floor, because you have basically 3 or 4 companies that are setting the price of milk nationwide. Let's deal with antitrust. You want to say let's take it to free market forces, but let's deal with antitrust. Let's deal with concentration. So I urge you to vote against this bill. It's a bad bill. It's in the wrong direction. I don't care who wrote it. But it is emphasizing dependence on the taxpayer. It is externalizing all of the risk management onto the taxpayer, not onto the farm, not onto the market, and it will only get more expensive from here. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Articulation of eloquent thoughts there, and some of the concurrent, I guess, things that I've heard this morning is specifically making sure that you're not skipping past the small and medium size, only kind of create a bill that impacts the larger community. Specifically, I think that you talked about like even the $1,000 loans, the entrepreneurship that you just mentioned there as well. It is something that's kind of impacted me this morning that we'll go back and take a look at it. There are still adjustments being made, and we would do what we can to try to do that. Specifically from the philosophical approach that I bring, some of you have already alluded to it as well, as far as making sure that we drive free market principles. Antitrust, I certainly agree with you, not just in this arena, but insurance, healthcare as a whole. You break through some of that, then you drive all the premiums down at some point, getting free markets back into it. Some of this stuff is decades in the making, so it's piece by piece, and as far as moving alongside. And as I said earlier, the ability to do that and make some of those transitions without ripping the rug out from somebody too quickly is, you don't want a detriment to the very thing that you're trying to get done as well. And that's the challenge. It's not a talking point, it's not a Washington speech. I haven't learned that yet, but it is something that's concerned as far as representing the different diverse farms that we have. I want to do a little bit more looking into when you talk about the diversity, as far as the government's role, as far as squelching that diversity as opposed to enhancing it, I guess is the best way to do that. So I appreciate your level. We would like to get your information before you leave today, because you may be a resource for us as we move forward. So it's amazing, even in the room, the diversity of thought and process as far as how you approach this, where the funds should go, how much should be on the taxpayers, how much should the taxpayers be accounted for, as we look to kind of continue to represent in the very best way. Julie, you're here. Did you want to add anything?
Sure. I just wanted to point out our office is very, very accessible, okay, in a number of ways. One of the other reasons we wanted to do this was open the lines of communication with many of you. I do see some familiar faces in the room that have communicated with us, but we want to get to know you. We want you to know that you can express your thoughts and ideas and concerns to our office in a variety of ways. The Congressman introduced Josh back here, who is our legislative assistant, who focuses on agriculture. He does work in D.C. He flew in from D.C. this morning for this.
He's in Carolina.
Yeah. And but we have phones, so Josh is willing to talk with you, at any time about your thoughts and concerns. We have an office in Graham. We have one in Asheboro that's run by Luke back there. We also have an office in Greensboro. I wanted to introduce Amber Allen, our staff assistant in Greensboro, who did a lot of work putting this together this morning. I'm very thankful. Phone, email, we're here, willing to set up in-person appointments. If you just want to talk to someone in person, instead of traveling to DC to talk to Josh, we're here to hear from you and to serve you in any way we can. And truly, we're honored by your presence this morning. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for taking the time to
We do appreciate it, Julie. Thank you for your work. I do recognize you from some even going to D.C., so don't ever hesitate from doing that. It is impactful to see and hear people, both in the community as we travel, but also in D.C. that means enough to come and sit down and look your representative in the eye or staff and say, this is why this particular area is important to us. We want to be here to serve. That's our calling, and when that wraps up, well, we should hang it up at that point. We want to be able to be out front in anything that you have. We are not uncomfortable with differing opinions, differing thoughts, because that helps us learn. And there have been some times that we've had to make adjustments on our thinking as we move forward. But any time that we can gather information from you guys, it is a benefit to us. Please continue to do so. God bless you. Thank you so much for coming out today.